Welcome back here on Newhouse Afternoon alongside Max Gifford. I'm Nico Horning, and we're now joined by Andrew Catalon, who was fresh off first few rounds of calling some March Madness games in Pittsburgh, in Detroit. Got a lot of good games this year, a lot of overtime games. Andrew, thanks for hopping on, first of all. Your second time on the show. We were just talking about it in the break on Q Sports Talk, that you're the first reoccurring guest we've had on here, so you've made history today. We're happy about that. But looking at this tournament so far this year with the overtime games, I mean, have you experienced anything like this as far as this many close games going on?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me back, guys. It's always good to be with you, and congrats on another great show and a great run here. In terms of your question, I mean, I think you're kind of used to those moments in March where there's overtimes and upsets and Cinderellas, but it just seemed like we had kind of a little crazy patch in Pittsburgh between the Oakland upset of Kentucky and then a couple of overtime games in the second round. One went to double OT between Creighton and Oregon. So, so much of it is luck and just being in the right place in the right time. And it feels like that we were in a good spot this past month.
I saw an article on The Athletic. Obviously you had the FDU upset last season with Purdue that got played a lot of times, and now you get some really close games this year. And I think the title of the article, did you see it? It was more talking about how, if you want some luck watching basketball, tune in to Catalon on CBS. It was just a funny thing to see that you're getting all the close games, and you just brought it up. An overtime game, Oakland and Kentucky, Oakland, NC State overtime. Then you go into double overtime with Creighton and Oregon. Was that maybe the most basketball that you've called in that short span amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, you're kind of used to the cadence of, when you do it a few years, of 4 games in one day. And that's what you have on the first round. And that's a challenge. It's a challenge to prepare. It's a challenge vocally, but it's also probably one of the best days of the year when you get to be at March Madness for 4 games in a row. And then I think you have that middle day to kind of rest. And then you're okay, 2 games left on the second round. Here we go. And didn't expect both of those to go to overtime. And there were some high octane moments in that as well. So, I think I learned this year a lesson in the sense of you really got to watch my voice. I was a little roughed up before the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 after all the exciting moments. So you always learn something every year. And this year I learned I got to be careful, as exciting as it is, to not really let it rip unless I have to.
Definitely. That's awesome. Max, I'll let you take it away here in a sec. I want to get to one more here based off, what you learned this year. You just brought it up. But, I'm watching the games, and they'll tune into you with the remaining minutes of the fourth or overtime. And it's not just the way you call the games, which is very clean and smooth, obviously, but it's the feel that you have for it, the reaction, the emotion that you're putting into it. And they'll cut over to you. Your reaction on the call is awesome. I have to say, I think it's so important for, obviously, broadcasters to have a feel for it. There's that Harlan video from last year where, he's telling everyone to lay off for a second, let the crowd breathe. But what is it like for you to keep that range where you're not getting overly excited as a fan, but you're still having fun and being in the moment while getting into it?
Yeah, I think, Nico, it's a really good question. First of all, that camera sometimes gets me in trouble because one team's fans think I'm rooting against them, which of course I'm not. I do not care who wins. But that's just my natural excitement. I mean, look, I grew up a huge fan. That's how I got into sports broadcasting, because I was a fan. And I still think it's important in those moments to feel like a fan, especially in March Madness, because you kind of embrace how crazy it is in these special moments. So I think you just kind of roll with it a little bit more, maybe in the NCAA tournament. So, it's never I'm rooting against a certain team. I mean, I've called Syracuse in the NCAA tournament, and there was no part of me calling that game that thought, okay, the Orange got to win because I went there. I mean, that's just not who we are, and that's not the job that we do. But I do think it's okay to be emotional, to have fun with it, and to show some excitement, because I think that's what the fan is doing at home, and you're kind of an extension of that fan when you're at the game.
Nico came out with the heavy hitting questions. That was going to be my first question. How was it to have that camera? Because it was one of my favorite parts is when they would cut in the melt to you, pumping your fist. I thought that was the funniest thing ever. Yep. But talking a little more about, that Nico talked about, getting, maybe too high in that moment. For a guy that called the Purdue game last year and then to have two heaters right off the bat, coming right back. I mean, we're going to sound like a broken record, but I know you're not allowed to bet in the position you are, but oh my goodness, you and Steve Lapis should buy a lottery ticket, considering how lucky you guys were when, getting those, high octane March Madness games. But talking a little bit more about, those moments, because obviously it's hard. You don't want to call every game like it's the national championship or every game like it's the greatest moment you've ever seen. And for you to have, those three straight, I guess it's not exactly three straight, but you have three of those moments in almost three March Madness games straight that you call. How do you, make sure that, keep yourself reserved so not every moment sounds the same, because each of those games had different things riding on it and they weren't, all the same level of a moment, but they all still had, importance to either some fan base or, even just basketball fans as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Max. I mean, I think that it's important, and what I learned at that FDU Purdue game a year ago is that you just got to stay in the moment, right? Like in the first half, I'd get in trouble if I started thinking, okay, FDU's going to do this. No, because we've seen that movie before where that the bigger team or the favorite figures it out and comes back to win. So that was my mentality for that game, and it probably wasn't until about 4 minutes left in the FDU game that I actually believed that they could win. And then I was kind of like, okay, let's think about what we're going to do here down the stretch. And that lesson from a year ago served me well, this year, in the sense that, I wasn't thinking about my fourth game of the night during my first game of the afternoon. It was just staying in the moment, calling the game, and if the moment warranted an exciting, outburst or a big call, then I went with it. Is in the back of my mind, am I thinking I got to call 4 games? Yes, but I'm not, skipping ahead to that fourth game, worrying that I have to have a voice by then. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the game I was calling justice, and that was kind of the way that I approached the NCAA tournament.
And then talking a little bit just about, the tournament as a whole, because you got the chance to watch, a lot of different storylines. The one that I think of especially is Oakland with Jack Golke. That was a pretty interesting game, to say the least. But there were so many different storylines throughout this entire March Madness tournament, and I think there is a, around college basketball, there's an idea that, maybe this wasn't the best tournament so far because you had, kind of a chalked up Sweet 16 or a chalked up Elite 8 because there weren't as many of those higher seed upsets. But what can you say just about, the nature of the tournament that you saw this year, if it was maybe any different from what you saw last year? Because I think last year after watching the tournament, there were a lot of us that said, okay, this is what we're going to see every year going forward. But was there any difference in sort of how, the tournament played out that you noticed from that broadcast perspective this year?
No, not particularly. I understand all your points. I would just say that, college basketball right now with the transfer portal and with the COVID year is a much older sport than it was. And I think that in some ways, the FDUs of the world, they're more experienced than they were in the past. And even now, we saw with Kentucky and so many freshmen losing to Oakland, an older team. So I think that's where the last couple of years I've noticed the difference. Even look at Purdue a year ago, they had freshman guards. Well, now those guards are fantastic, and that's a big reason, other than Zach Edey, why they're in the Final Four. But a year ago, they were freshmen. They weren't necessarily ready for that moment. So I do think experience in the NCAA tournament has really swayed some of the results the last couple of years. Now, with the COVID year, on the horizon of going away, it might morph back to the way it was several years ago. But right now, I think you need older players, and I think that was kind of an issue for Kentucky and why they lost in the first round.
Nico Horning, Max Gifford here on Newhouse Afternoon with Andrew Catalon joining us, one of the broadcasters for March Madness on CBS. We're going to step aside. We'll bring him back for a few more minutes to round out the show here on Newhouse Afternoon. You're listening to Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.
Q Sports Talk takes.
So, Andrew, talking about, I'm kind of curious because you You had a few games in Pittsburgh, a couple in Detroit. You've been doing this for several years now, but what have you seen as far as the city differences? Is it when the game's played, is it all the same? Does every atmosphere is it different, like an NBA arena, or how does that all work and flow together?
Yeah, Nico, I've done it 10 years now, so I've seen it like a rockin' arena and an arena that might not be so pumped up. So much of it has to do with if there's a team or teams close by or within driving distance, last
Gotcha.
year in Columbus, Purdue and Michigan State were both there, so they were able to get there pretty easily. This year in Pittsburgh, Kentucky wasn't a far drive. Oakland wasn't a far drive. So, I think that kind of makes a big difference. Like, how does the fan base travel? And I think that luckily for us this year, both Pittsburgh and Detroit were pretty much sold out, so it was a lot of fun.
Is there a favorite atmosphere or arena you've gotten to call in?
I would say for college basketball, calling a game at Rupp Arena was cool. But for the tournament, I would say that I've been to Salt Lake City a few times. That's usually been a pretty good environment. Columbus was a lot of fun last year. I mean, you go to some great places, and it's really you're so focused on calling the games that you don't get to experience too much of the city. But all the places have done a good job.
Nice, that's awesome. And we talked a little bit about the prep, but you prepare for 4 games, and then you kind of go from there. How has your prep changed maybe when you first started doing this 10 years ago?
Yeah, I think that I've had to kind of rethink how I approach the second round games. I mean, I get everything together for the first round games, and then I used to just kind of start all over and start fresh. But I found that I wasn't resting properly. I was staying up too late. I think the biggest thing is to make sure you're feeling good and you get enough rest and you're sleeping. Your brain has to work so much that if you're fried from cramming, basically, you're not going to probably do a good job, or you're going to miss things. So I've really prioritized being healthy and getting rest for the second round games as opposed to maybe when I first started doing it.
Nice.
And for a game like college basketball, where maybe a lot of fans aren't watching these teams the entire year, and I'm hand up, I'm one that likes to pay attention just when the conference tournament starts and really invest in the teams then. But how do you best go about, really introducing those characters and introducing the storylines for each team? Because it's not easy, especially to kind of put into context, 2 teams' entire seasons into 40 minutes of basketball.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And certainly you're a little more broad when you're introducing the teams. I mean, obviously the fans that watch every game are already going to know, but there's so many people who are casual viewers who just kind of tune in March, and you've got to do your job to get them up to speed on how the season has played out. So it's definitely a little different than calling a regular season game in February in terms of the approach.
Awesome. Probably have another minute or so on here. Yeah, I mean, Andrew, you'll be going to Augusta here soon. When do you head down?
Monday.
Nice. Awesome. That'll be a lot of fun. So,
yeah, looking forward to it.
I was going to say, it should be a great tournament. And it's got to be, we brought this question up the last time, but, what time of year you like best, and it all shows up at the right time. But, this has got to be one of your busiest stretches, I would think, going straight from March Madness into the Masters, right?
Yeah, definitely this March, doing the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 for the first time, and then going and jumping in. It's been fun, but it's definitely been kind of crazy too.
Awesome. Anything going on the next
ESPN Syracuse Sports Talk shows on QSportsTalk.com. Tomorrow's broadcasting stars today. Broadcasting live from the campus of Syracuse University. This is Newhouse Afternoon.
Closing up shop here on Newhouse Afternoon. It's Nico Horning, Max Gifford, and we have the pleasure to be joined again by Andrew Catalon, fresh off his first Sweet 16 and Elite 8 calling March Madness. Has called it for 10 years now, which feels crazy to say. He's been one of the voices for some of the biggest moments in these tournaments. We've had the chance to talk to him so far about all the different moments that he's gotten to call, what's gone into that, the preparation. Andrew, again, we can't thank you enough for joining us again. It's been fun to have you on again just to talk March Madness. We were just talking a little bit about how this is your busiest stretch of the year. You go down to Augusta this Monday, kind of talking about, that kind of stretch, because obviously it's every broadcaster's dream to have a very heavy workload. But during times like these, especially where you have nothing going on, how do you best rest for those moments coming up?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like you said it, Max, like this is our dream. I mean, when I was in school, I didn't even dream of doing March Madness or, golf or whatever. I was just, looking forward to calling my next game at AER and trying to get through classes. So I never even got this far. So I'm just enjoying it. I feel very lucky and fortunate. And also, when you get these opportunities, you got to make the most of them. And that's what I tell all you guys and girls. Like when you're getting reps, that's the best way to get better. But at the same time, you also got to make the most of it and prove that you can handle, those big moments. So, I try to keep doing that and keep doing my prep. I mean, not much has changed. I used to make manila boards with colored pens in school, and I still do all that. So it's like I just try to, channel what I learned back in school and what you guys and girls are doing now, and it seemed to have worked well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for hopping on here. I mean, I guess the last one I'll kind of allude to is, how are you balancing being gone for a minute, going back home, going down to Augusta? Does it all just culminate together, or it's a lot of fun, obviously, but how do you balance it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is making sure you get all your prep done, making sure you're ready to go, making sure you're healthy, you're getting your sleep. And then just kind of rolling. I mean, there'll be time for me to catch my breath in the spring and summer, but right now is not that time, and I couldn't be happier. I mean, it's just been a blast these last few weeks, and looking forward to keeping it going.
Definitely. Well, thanks for making time to jump on here. I mean, we really appreciate you hopping on the second time this year. Thanks for everything you do here at Newhouse WAER, and we really appreciate you jumping on today. Best of luck down in Augusta. That'll be a lot of fun. I haven't checked the weather. I'm sure you have. Everything look all right, or a little stormy, or how
looks warm? Yeah, it looks a little warm, which we like. We like to see that after I know you guys and me here in New Jersey haven't had the best weather the last few weeks.
Definitely not the best draw, but time flies to say the least. I think both times we've had you on, Andrew, time somehow runs away. We love talking to you. We really appreciate you coming on again. Maybe we can potentially, this is our penultimate show of the year, but potentially any chance, maybe you could be a third-time guest, maybe next semester when we have a show again. Okay, we got a third-time invite. Awesome. Well, Andrew, thanks so much again.
Do I get a gift of some sort, like a robe, maybe a third-time robe? Yeah. Okay.
Of course.
Thanks, guys. Good being with you.
We'll make it work. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, that was Andrew Catalon with CBS Sports. Hey, we'll see if we make it happen. But
we'll have to give him a gift.
I know, right? A great second time. Just finished up March Madness. Got a couple Final Four games here this Saturday. He'll head down to Augusta for the Masters. So great time of year for Andrew, and really just an awesome sportscaster that's from Syracuse. So really fun to listen and watch. But for Max Gifford and Nico Horning, we thank all of you for tuning in or watching us here on Q Sports Talk. We'll be back for our last show next Thursday. It's crazy. I know. It'll be fun, though, so we hope you all can tune in then. But for now, this is Nico and Max signing off here on Newhouse Afternoon on Q Sports Talk and ESPN Radio.